So thanks again so much for coming out here, and so excited about the fact that Grim Fandango, which I consider to be the best adventure game ever made, is going to get a second life in a remastered version. And I figured I'd ask the sort of start at the start question is, where did Grim come from? And did you always know you wanted a noir thing in the Land of the Dead, or how did you end up there?
Yeah, how did that come about? I'm just happy that we get to talk about an old game. Well, it's kind of new also. Everything here is all about new stuff. But
well, Grim's kind of forever young. It's sort of timeless.
You can't see the characters aging because there's no skin on them.
That's true.
The earliest, well, back in college, I took this class called The Forms of Folklore, which was the best. Like I always say, the classes that helped me, people ask me what should I study if I want to get into games and stuff, and all the things that helped me the most were the classes that were not in my CS major. They're like my anthro classes and my English classes and all the just crazy things there are to learn in the world, or what help you when you're coming up with ideas for a game. And this anthro class was all about folklore, which was everything from ancient legends, myths, to like jump rope rhymes and riddles and car games and things you could play. And the teacher would just like ask somebody like, what kind of game did you play in the car when you saw a car with one headlight? This is off topic. Anyway, and someone would say like, oh, it was punch bug, and you could punch the other person, and then you could tell them what state they were from. And all these amazing things you could just tell from what version of the story you told. So anyway, we had one section on the Day of the Dead, and we studied how the Day of the Dead holiday had kind of evolved in Mexico. And it was so fascinating to me because there's this very serious religious holiday in the Catholic Church, Todos Santos, which is like, it was about remembering your dead relatives, and it's very reverent and quiet. And then at a certain point, the Mexican Board of Tourism was like, we should kind of amp this up a little bit. And so like, some of the towns are doing it right, and they have the sugar skulls out, and they have the festivals and the parades and stuff, and like we should. So I just love that angle where it was like a serious religious holiday, but also kind of like a little commercial angle, like let's amp this up and really get into this. And then I saw the little, sometimes they call calaveras or calacas, the little paper mache skeletons, and the little dioramas of them. Someone gave me a skeleton woman on an operating table giving birth to a skeleton baby with skeleton doctors, and I was like, God, this looks like a game to me. This looks amazing. And exactly. And you'd see that I had a book where the backgrounds are all black, and it was like these day glow colors on these little dioramas of skeleton dentists and skeleton street sweepers, and it just looked like a little world that you could jump into and run around with. And so I was like, I want to make a game about that. And as we were working on it, we're also really just happened to be in this phase where I was reading a lot of Raymond Chandler and watching a lot of Humphrey Bogart movies, and I was like, I want to have this angle of corruption in it. You know, just the way that serious religious holiday had been kind of corrupted by tourism, but was still good for a lot of people. I wanted to have that corruption angle be in there, and taking things from like the movie Chinatown about these plots of an evil land scheme going on. It all seemed to fit together.
Yeah, totally. Let's move to the noir stuff. I think it's really interesting that you were reading that stuff while you were thinking about the Day of the Dead stuff, because you found a way to meld them that seemed to build a cohesive world. And I think that's really interesting. And before we talk about sort of the design of the world, can we talk about noir stuff? Do you have a favorite? Noir.
Let's talk about noir.
Okay.
I like saying noir.
Me too. Noir. I think I say it wrong and too slowly.
I never say noir. But it's kind of like anime. Ever since someone tells you, no, it's not called anime, it's called anime, and then I still say it wrong because I don't want to sound like, well, I mean, noir. Let's say noir. Noir.
Fair.
Noir. Keep going.
So, do you have a favorite noir film? Like, there's a lot of Hollywood noir and Grim's DNA.
I mean, I think my favorite film of all time is Casablanca.
Mine too.
Yeah. Casablanca Party.
It's so good.
And I always felt that answer was always obvious because it was on TV a lot when I was a kid, and I always thought, well, everyone's seen it. But a lot of people have not seen Casablanca, but it's an amazing movie. I just think it should be what, like, film schools should just be watching that movie over and over and over again, because it's just really great. And it's got, Rick is just such an awesome character. Him in his white tuxedo, and he's just sitting there drinking and smoking and bummed out. He's just amazing, just heavy. Everything weighs so heavily upon him.
And Manny becomes that in the second year of Grim.
Yeah, that's why Manny has a white tuxedo for sure.
Yeah.
Rick.
But then he kind of becomes Humphrey Bogart from Key Largo later on, with the sort of captain's cap and the boat, little Humphrey Bogart ended up in a lot of
He had a lot of. He looked good in the sailor suit.
He did. He looked
Even in
great
the
all
Cane
the time.
Mutiny, he looked really good in that
He
hat.
did look good.
He was meant to be in that. It was perfect for him. And costume changes. There's not enough costume changes in games. You know, it really shows
that's
like
true.
people don't wear the same clothes all the time,
They don't.
except for well.
Ernest did. And that's off topic. I'm sorry. But there were a lot of other Casablanca characters that sort of made their way into.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I think
Sidney
Sidney Greenstreet. You
character.
know, that Hector LeMans was
Uh-huh.
basically based on Sidney Greenstreet,
He
who
even has
owned
the little chuckle.
Yeah, and he owned the Blue Parrot, which kind of became the Blue Casket in Grimm. And there's all these things that we just totally stole from. Well, it's a reference to show how smart we were.
For sure.
In Grim Fandango.
Well, this is one of the things that's really interesting. That's really humble of you to say, but it's really easy to be derivative.
Extremely humble.
No,
Thank you
it's
for
really
recognizing
easy to
that.
be derivative and when you're pulling from stuff like that. But there's nothing about Grimm that's derivative. It's so vital, and any one of its characters pretty much seems like they could be the subject of their own game.
Well, thanks. But if you steal from enough sources, it's really not stealing at all. If you just take a lot of them, no one can really
Is that
pin
the
it on
secret?
one. Yeah, it's a steal from a bunch. If you watch like everything, well, just a lot of stuff in Grimm it's very inspired by. Just loved movies and books that were that just all showed up in that game. You know.
So what was finding Grimm's visual aesthetic sort of guidelines? What did that look like, finding that world?
Well, our lead artist was Pete Sekel and Peter Chan did all the concept art, and it was one of those weird. I don't want to make it sound like it was easy because I didn't do any of it, but so it was really easy for me. But once we started combining, like let's do like Mexican folklore mixed with noir, which started to become more like Mayan and Aztec mixed with Art Deco, which is like everything all of a sudden looked awesome. Like as soon as you put like Mayan and Aztec stuff in an Art Deco setting, it really looks cool, and it just all these things happen. Like Peter Chan would send us a package of fresh art every week, and he would have a drawing of a ziggurat, you know, like on a cruise liner, and I was like, I've not seen that before. So that looks awesome. There's one theater called like the Aztec. There are certain like Art Deco movie theaters, and I think it's in Colorado or something. There's just a few. There's a building in San Francisco that has like an Aztec and Art Deco lobby. That's where my dentist is. That's why I go there.
One of the things I was sort of thinking about when I was rewatching a bunch of Grimm stuff over the past couple weeks was that there's this constant theme of movement and transit that runs throughout that I suppose mirrors all souls are supposed to be on their 4-year journey through the afterlife, and the worst thing that you can do to someone is plant them or root them in one spot so they can never sort of
Oh, I like that
move
thing with the
on.
roots you just did. I wish I thought of that at the time.
Well,
I should have written. That's good.
Yeah.
That's true. Because that came up, you know, partially through the game. Where like this, it's hard to make people like in gangster movies. You're really worried about someone getting shot. You're worried about characters dying. It's like how do you worry about that when everyone's dead already? So we invented that whole idea of sprouting, of like kind of going back to life and turning into a bunch of flowers, and making that really horrifying to imagine, you know. And, because part of the problem was, you know, as we were stealing stuff from a lot of different sources, Chinatown has this great plot that I'll just spoil for everyone now. No, I won't. But you uncover this land scheme that the Noah, you know, Noah, what's his name?
John Huston.
John Huston's character Noah something or other. He had this great scheme, and I was like, oh, it's so great that when a villain has a really good plot, like a really good thing, he's up to no good, and it's really thought it out. And your main character trips over a piece of it at a time until you realize that there's this whole, like, oh my god, conspiracy. And so, we promised we weren't going to say conspiracy up here. So it, yeah, I'm kind of done thinking about that. So I had, you know, that was about land. It was a land scheme. And so originally it was a man who was going to be a real estate agent. Because I also really liked, there's a lot of new noir that was coming out at that time, like Glengarry Glen Ross and The Usual Suspects. And Glengarry Glen Ross just had the desperation of salesmen that was just so, you'd feel it, and it was just so painful to watch. It was just, oh, I love that movie.
Jack Lemmon's super rough to watch in that.
It's so good. It's so good. Every time I watch that movie, I want to stand up and cheer for every single monologue in it. But so I was like, he's going to be a real estate salesman. And then I was like, well, who'd want to buy land in the land of the dead? Like, you don't really, because the folklore that really inspired a lot of that that made me realize that it could be a game was when I started reading about the 4-year journey of the soul. You die, and then your soul goes on a journey that takes 4 years, and you're trying to get to Mictlan, or this land of eternal rest. And it just sounded like this great road trip, this great like quest. It just seemed like the hero's journey, all the things. It just seemed like this is something you have to make a story about. But it was all about moving across the land of the dead and trying to get somewhere. And so a real estate agent, who'd want to buy a house there? You'd want to keep moving. So you became a travel agent for that reason.
That's super cool. That's my feedback on that.
We're sticking with it.
All the modes of transportation were really interesting too, and it seemed like Le Mans' scheme was sort of enabled by all these changes, and urbanization is an important part of a lot of noir. But that seemed to be important in Grimm too, like the city's a place where a lot of stories are and a lot of things happen, and it changes over the course of the game. And it seems like, originally at some point in the game's past, everyone had to walk their 4 years, but then you started to have these other modes of transportation, and then that led to people taking advantage of each other in ways that maybe weren't possible before. So I guess my question is, did you imagine that this Grimm's running concurrently to the real world, or that it's sort of its own timeless place?
That's a good question, because I don't really think about the real world or the land of the living that much in a regular game. But in my head, I guess it is set in the same period of time, and all those transportation aspects are so new. Having a super fast train, with the train being the big exciting thing that gets you places really fast. But the excitement about cars and everything, yeah, for sure, we thought about that stuff. And I like trains. Also,
cool.
And at least the corruption, which is awesome.
Yeah,
and hot rods. Also, I love hot rods. Hot rods. It kind of breaks the whole noir thing, but I really loved Big Daddy Roth hot rods.
No problem with that.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, mentioning the land of the living quickly, the brief moments that it's depicted, it's a sort of an interesting photo collage. So you never show living people to compare the skeleton people with.
Because it seemed like it would be really weird. I've seen some fan art of what Manny would look like with skin, and he looks creepy. He's creepy. You don't want to imagine that, especially with that forehead that he has. So it's like Manny with hair, once you get used to it. And so with the land, having actual people, we thought, and also 3D, the whole reason we made the game 3D, because this is like 1998, we started in 96, and there was a lot of pressure to make 3D games, and I was like, I hate the 3D, looks horrible, it looks terrible. But I really liked some aspect of it, like Alone in the Dark came out, and you could see the zombie from 2 different camera angles, and I was like, that's really cool. Well, imagine seeing one art asset from 2 different angles, that's mind-boggling. And there was a game called Bioforge, did you ever see it? It was an Origin game.
Yeah, that was local, I think.
It was local, yeah, Texas, right?
Yeah.
In Austin, too?
I think so.
Yeah, it was Origin, yeah. And, thank you. And it had pre-rendered backgrounds, and you moved a character through it, and so I still didn't like the way that 3D looked back then, because it just looked like everyone was like cardboard boxes that had been taped together, and they had like all their details were just drawn on the outside of the boxes. But then when you see the little paper mache skeletons, all their bones are drawn. They don't model the rib cage. They just make a big wad of paper mache and then paint the rib cage on it. And it's like, that looks just like 3D, 1996 3D. That's great. But I didn't say 1996 because it was 1996. So it's like, let's make this could be the art style for the game. And so, but then to put real people in with skin and flesh is like, basically I thought it also would look horrible. And so we went for this art style that was like a photo collage, but also because this thing is optical illusion I used to like when I was a kid. If you take a picture of someone from a magazine and you cut out their eyes, like a square around their eyes and a square around their mouth, and then you turn them upside down and put them back on, they just look like the devil.
Oh, I've never done that.
It's fun.
That sounds scary.
Yeah, try that right now.
I have a magazine.
It's really fun. So that's what happens if you scare the people in Land of the Living. They do that. They flip upside down.
So I was wondering if anything turned out way better than you expected in Grimm, and anything that you thought was gonna work really well but didn't, looking back on it.
The game turned out better than what turned out better? Well, we ended up cutting a lot of stuff, which is weird because it seems so big now, but we always start really ambitious and get slightly more ambitious and then less ambitious later. And then what didn't work? Well, the thing that I really thought would work really well, one of the things that was great about Bioforge is that you could travel through all these different camera angles. And the camera would be above you, and then to the side, and then underneath you, looking up. And the thing that made it not confusing as a player was that you could just push the forward button. Had these amazing tank controls which were really successful. I thought I loved tank controls, and at the time, well, I'm talking about it like I really loved. They were normal at the time. BioForge had them, and Tomb Raider, and Resident Evil 1 and stuff. And I always say this is like when we find a picture of my mom with these striped slacks on from the 70s, and she's like, it was very popular at the time. So tank controls were really popular at the time, but I thought it helped with the camera angle problem. But it turned out to be like the #1 thing people complained about in the game was driving these tank controls around. And part of it's because like it was built for this number pad on the side of your keyboard that not everybody has. They were using the other keys. I'm really good at it. So in the new game, it's still there, but it's we'll have other controls for younger kids. Don't know how to work the tank controls, so we put in helpful controls for the generation, the now generation, who wants to just push in a direction, have the character go that direction, and other radical ideas.
They're spoiled. So they don't know how hard it was to run.
And the Legos are all built for you now.
It's true. So, the remaster, what's that like revisiting all that stuff? Sort of, are you changing much, or?
Yeah, we are trying, like, we're doing a little documentary about it. I don't know if you've seen it, but one of the programmers on it describes it as trying to do like a Blu-ray of Casablanca, which is just because Grim Fandango is better than Casablanca. No, but like, instead, some people want us to remake it from scratch, but we were talking about, like, no, we wanted to make the fidelity of the original version just look a lot better and sound a lot better and play a lot better. So it's the original. That was the handcrafted art. We just really liked the art. We just wanted to like have, we have modern lighting techniques we can do, and we can up-res these textures on these characters, and we can do things to make it look better, and we can actually take the sound. Some of the songs, our composer Peter McConnell was unhappy with the electrical versions he had to use of all the symphonic parts, and so we're actually going to re-record those with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra that sound amazing, which is going to sound great.
Cool.
Yep. And it's a lot of Melbourne fans out there. So just making it look and sound and adding, like I said, those modern controls for people to play it, I think is what the tack we're taking with that.
Sounds awesome.
Thanks. Thank you. It will be awesome.
Pretty cool.
It's going to be pretty cool.
Let me look in my notebook for more questions.
That's the same kind of notebook I use at work.
Really?
Yeah.
I just stole it from you. Sorry. So, I didn't really, though. It's mine. You got a day at Walmart.
Five subject or 4 subject? It's like a 4 subject. I use 5 subject at work.
My notebook. Fine. 3. It's 3. Tim, it's 3.
When you're older, you can handle 5. I'm like a big believer in free writing. Have you ever tried that? Where you just
isn't that where ghosts make you write stuff?
No, is that free writing?
I thought so.
Well, I think that kind of fits because this is about. It's scary, but it's the idea that one of the intimidating things when you're writing is to get started, to just look at the blank page and be like, and then the first character said, it's just horrible. So free writing is like you cannot censor yourself at all, and you just write, even if you're writing just the same word over and over again, purple, like whatever. You have to keep writing for it's 2 minutes, or sometimes you do it for an hour, just like. And once you can't stop, you stop that little sensor in your head that makes you think too much about writing, and then you just start barfing out thoughts, and then pretty soon you have some interesting thoughts you didn't realize you had. And that's why I fill up notebooks like that of a lot of stuff, and then people find it and they go like, you look like the killer from Seven. You know that notebook they have in Seven? The guy just filled it out with his manifesto, like, are you the Unabomber? It's like, well, no.
So how do you go about figuring out the sort of arcs of characters and overall pacing in your games?
I mean, every game is different, and Grimm, I think I was already, I read some really basic, writing technique, and I studied creative writing in college, but then I just read Screenplay, the Sid Field book, I think it's called, which is all about the 3-act structure. The book's only this thick, so everyone should read it. It's very simple. And it just lays out how basically you set up a 3-act structure and plot point 1 and 2, and you don't have to follow that formula for sure, but it helps you think about why they work, and then you can think about how you can use these devices in your own writing. So I do think about the first act and how that's going to turn around, the second act, how that kind of conflict is going to escalate, and then what kicks off the third act, and all these technical points that you think about, the lowest point your character goes through. And some people go more for the hero's journey type archetypes, which I think kind of get a little overstated sometimes because people treat that as like a formula you have to stick to. Like your hero has to go through this period of this, and you don't have to. It's just like, to me, just like a bag of tricks you pull from. And like, you want him to, maybe it would be helpful to have this Prometheus character like Obi-Wan, but you don't have to have an Obi-Wan in your story. You can not have that. Right?
I think there's an Obi-Wan in Grimm.
No, there's not. But maybe it'd be as popular as Star Wars if there was one.
Maybe.
We'll never know.